Hello everybody! Today I have a chassis, but not just any chassis. This is the new one from NZXT. This is the H7 Flow, and this is a really exciting case and one I wanted to do a full video about, because I think if you're looking at building yourself a mid to high-end system, this is probably going to be on your shortlist, because it looks pretty cool, it's got loads of airflow, and while it's not the cheapest case out there, it's certainly not the most expensive either. In this video, we're going to be putting this case under the microscope. We're going to be looking at the ins and the outs, the nice, the not so nice, and we're going to be doing a full build with it. And we will be seeing whether this is actually going to give us a gaming PC that is worth its money in frames per second, and ultimately whether this computer case is worthy to be used in your next gaming computer. Stay tuned for the full build after a short word from this video's sponsor. NVIDIA's Ampere laptops are in stock, and they're now more affordable than ever, with new deals going live each week on RTX 3050, 3060, 3070 and 3080 laptops. Now is the perfect time to get yourself in on the action, with crazy performance and features like DLSS and RTX ray tracing. Land yourself your dream laptop today with the link down below. Right, what do you need to know about this? Well, this is the second generation, if you like, of the Flow chassis. The first one was the H510, and that was a bit smaller than this, and that was almost like a modification of an existing case. This one is built from the ground up to essentially be the best case, if you like, for high-end builds, anyone that wants a case that's on the larger side, but not anything ridiculous. This is probably like a Corsair 5000D equivalent. And I mean, in terms of looks, I do like it. It's perhaps a little bit on the plainer side, but it is very much the sort of chassis that's going for the minimal look. This wants your PC to actually do the talking from within rather than just the chassis itself, which I do like. I think a lot of them can be too garish these days, but this is probably one that's a little bit on the safe side, but obviously it's all down to personal taste. Now, there are actually 3 different color options for this, because they've sent me 2. This is the all white version, and the inside is white. You can get an all black version if you prefer to go for that, but the one we have here is black on the inside and then white on the outside, which I think looks okay. Maybe I'd rather it was the other way around. I don't know, let me know in the comment section below. The side panels come off easy enough. It's completely toolless, slightly stiff, but it does just lift away. Exactly the same with the other side. This clearly isn't a Be Quiet chassis because you don't have any acoustic treatment or anything on the inside, but it is pretty thick, so I don't think you're gonna have to worry about noise or anything. Obviously it is gonna be inevitable, but in this day and age, you don't really get too many hard drives that would mean that this would block out much sound anyway. In fact, down the bottom, you do have a hard drive cage, but only enough room for 2. Cable management is what I would describe as evolved NZXT. So you've got these cable management strips along the left and the right, but I really like the way they have this bar on the inside, and you can remove this to get cables underneath if you do want that. But once your motherboard comes in, this sort of hides a lot of those nasties, things like the ATX connector that can get really big. You do of course have 2.5-inch drive bays for hard drives or SSDs. Plenty of room up here for cable management as well, along with a little bit at the top. There aren't too many tie-down hooks, but as you've got a lot of straps, you probably don't need them. It's more just, I guess, here at the top. Be nice to have a couple, but you do have one over here. Moving around to the main chamber, and this is definitely very classic NZXT at this stage. It doesn't really look too different to any of the other cases, which some people think is good, others would want something a little bit different. But I like the fact that it is minimalist and it does let your components do the talking. For a larger size case, it supports, I guess, what I would expect it to. This isn't huge, you can't get like a 420 radiator on the top or the bottom. You can get 3 140mm fans at the front, but sadly you can't do this with radiators. But there's a lot more airflow really than you'll find on the H510, because you've got this full mesh at the front now, rather than just having like a little flap at the top. That was silly, especially from a case that called itself the Flow. That was very limiting. So I'm glad to see that they have remedied that, if you like, on this particular Flow version. But the only thing I'll say is that if you do want to stack up the radiator so you have 2 fans on it, I don't think you're going to have enough room, maybe if they're super low profile, but it's not really the right case for that, to be honest. I think my only real complaint at this stage is with the fans that you get included, because they're not RGB sadly, and they're not going to be the absolute highest quality out there. You've got a 120 at the rear and then a 120 at the front. And to be fair, for basic airflow, this is going to be fine. But personally speaking, I think manufacturers should stop including fans in their cases and just let us save the money, because this case is £120 and I'm pretty sure they could have done it for £100 with no fans, and then you could use that 20 quid to buy yourself some things that are better, or at least give us like an elite version of the Flow, because you can get a more premium version of this case that has an RGB fan controller and RGB fans, and then you've got tempered glass at the front. It's a fair bit more expensive, and it won't have the same level of airflow, but it is going to be something that is worth considering. But I think they should offer an elite version of this that has those same upgrades, just sans the tempered glass. That's the one I would want to buy anyway. The front panel is very easy to remove if it is a little stiff. You've got a dust filter under here that can be removed, like so. Exactly the same down the bottom for the power supply. And then I imagine we're 3 for 3, exactly the same with the front panel, more mesh, and then you guessed it, a dust filter. Solid. Or I suppose not solid. The final thing to report before we get our build on is with the front I/O. Here you've got your power button with an LED around it, 2 USB 3s, a reversible 3.1 Type-C, but this is Gen 2, so slightly faster, and then a combined headphone and microphone combo jack. But I imagine, when we go into our little box of goodies, that we should get some more SSD bays, some screws, and not an adapter. You used to get an adapter to turn it into stereo. Maybe they don't include that anymore. Doesn't bother me, but might bother you. Oh, if you want some context, it is the hottest day of the year so far in the UK. Apparently it's hotter than Hawaii. Classic press. But bear with me, because I'm gonna get hot and sweaty and smelly. You can feel the aroma and musk from here, or from where you are. Even if you're in Venezuela, you can still smell me. So let's get our motherboard in. We're going with an air cooler on an i7, but obviously if you do want to go for a radiator or something, this case will definitely support that. Massive fan of the fact that the ATX standoffs are actually pre-included, and they do give you the little knobbly bit so you can put your board in and line it up without having to put any screws in at all. All of the screws come semi-labeled. It'd be nice if they actually said motherboard on it, rather than just the technical names. Sure, you're a smart one. You can work it out. I think the joke is that I've actually used the wrong screws. Motherboard is in. Graphics card is up next. This is one that Power Color sent over. This is the RX 750 XT, one of AMD's refreshes to make their cards look a little bit newer than they are. But because this is an i7-12700K build, this is going to be a nice high-end rig that should be fairly representative of this and next generation. No thumb screws on the PCIe slot covers, which doesn't really bother me, but you tend to see that at this price point. Graphics card in. There you go. Loads of room. This is the main difference really, and why I would rather have this over the slightly smaller H510, because again, especially with next gen, the cards are going to be getting bigger and bigger, and this just looks a lot more comfortable. And if it's going to be sitting on your desk, the length doesn't really matter too much, assuming your desk, I suppose, is long enough. This just looks like a nice comfortable size, and you do have plenty of room for a radiator at the front or at the top as well. So I think it's definitely a good size. It is bigger than something like a 500DX as well from Be Quiet. And in terms of the pricing, I guess the main issue I have with it is that this is a lot more than the 510, and you only really get like a bigger case. You're not getting a controller or anything for the fans, and you're not getting the best fans in the world. But then again, it is a bigger case, and something like the 500D I think is slightly more expensive. It is at RRP anyway, so I think the pricing is probably about right, but the H510, if you can fit everything in, is definitely a better bargain. I almost celebrated too soon and thought that the build was complete, but then I remembered we have to put a power supply in. So this is an 850 watt one from NZXT that they sent in my review kit along with the case itself. And yes, I'm using a screwdriver to open it. And what? I'm a professional. Oh, that was sassy, wasn't it? Just like my final year uni project was sassy. What's it stand for again? Editor Carl. What am I talking about? Clearly not a funny joke. Power supply just goes in at the bottom. Ventilation underneath, of course. If you are using a particularly ugly power supply from the front, then the shroud does cover it, which is a touch that I like. And then something else that I've only just noticed, but I think is a really nice touch, is that this case is large enough that if you do want to use like a 360 radiator at the front, you don't need to remove the hard drive cage, because you've got this gap here that goes all the way down, which I think is going to be very useful for those that have a large music library or something. You've got plenty of room down here at the bottom. Quite often with cases you need to remove the hard drive cage if you're going to do that, but clearly not here. As this is a case review, this bit is probably more exciting than normal, the cable management, because we've got 3 different options for every single thing. I have a feeling that the ATX is just going to sit through like that. You could tuck it around the side, I suppose, but I don't think that's strictly necessary. The CPU can quite easily go here and route around the side. It's going to be pretty easy to plug this in if you've not got anything at the top, but as soon as you put fans and especially a radiator here, be careful. I would route this before you fit those. Ah, yes, they've also given you this little cutout down the bottom for the graphics card cable, which I love because I think this is the cleanest way of doing it. The only exception to that rule would be if your socket is all the way over here or over there. Look at that, it comes through and then just connects as easy as fiddly cables can possibly be, which clearly still isn't that easy, but that's not the case's fault. I'll confess, I'm pretty happy so far. There's still plenty of room to get to everything. I'm now going to add a hard drive and an SSD, and I've deliberately done this almost the wrong way round to show what it would be like to upgrade this. Because obviously it's always easy to add stuff when it's new, but adding extra storage capacity, extra drives, probably something you're gonna do after you've built your system. But these just slide in there, as easy as that. There isn't any rubber grommets or anything, which is slightly concerning. Will give you more vibrations, and it doesn't look as if there's any rubber screws either. So if you've got a load of hard drives, this is probably not going to be the right case for you. That is actually a little bit concerning, if I'm honest. Oh, and it's not even like you can screw this in without taking the whole hard drive cage out. Definitely loses some marks there. I know most people aren't going to be buying new hard drives, but a lot of people are going to be carrying them across, I'm sure. As for installing a 2.5-inch drive, it's just one screw. This pops out, clips into the caddy, and then screws in. I would prefer that this was completely toolless, but you can't get everything in life. Just like that, clips back into place semi-toollessly, but you still need a screwdriver. So it's not really toolless at all, is it? And then now, but certainly not least, we have our front panel connections. All of the usual stuff, USB-C, USB 3, and then my personal favorite, a front panel connection that does everything. No fiddling about whatsoever. NZXT, you did good, other than the hard drive cage. Right, I think everything has hotted up enough for now, and I am mainly talking about myself. This is build complete, and there's not really been any concerns, to be honest. I think it's come out quite nicely. Obviously, it's been a bit quicker because we had our motherboard pre-made up and ready to go. Cable management at the back, I haven't really done anything yet other than use the straps. It's very clearly laid out, very easy to use. I will screw that hard drive cage down. I imagine the easiest way of accessing it is just screwing it in from here. But now that I've done that, our rig is pretty much finished and ready to turn on and test. So let's clip the front panel back on, plug in the SATA cables that I forgot to put in, grab our monitor, make sure it's on. We've got power, we've got everything connected, and here we go. We have life. Side panel goes on really easily, but it does look as if we're working, which is good. And there we are, we're in. So let's firmly christen this computer with its tempered glass side panel. I do like that mechanism actually. And there you have it. What do you guys think? Our finished build, does it look good? To my eyes, it doesn't really look too different to the 510. The front is definitely a little bit cleaner. I think I do like the overall look, but it is very boxy. There's no getting around that. And because we don't have too many components in here, if anything, it does actually look a little bit on the empty side. Just at the top here, it needs some extra fans or a radiator or something. The front isn't such a big deal because you can't actually see through this mesh panel. But I think if you did have some RGB fans on the front, it would look a lot better. But then obviously the price of your case does go through the roof. You're probably looking at, what, like 70 quid to populate this with RGB fans, maybe slightly more, slightly less, depending on the brand that you go for. There's not really any reason to specifically go for NZXT ones because they haven't given you a controller, which I think is a missed opportunity there, really. But I suppose for the money, not too bad. I would just rather they gave you an option of not having the fans or give you the premium ones, personally. All of the fans, by the way, are 3 pins. Sadly, they're not PWM, which is why I say you're going to want to replace them fairly swiftly, probably. Also, don't plug your fans in while the PC is on. If this blows up, the video ends. If yours blow up, well, your PC could end. I don't think I've done that before, but a PC has died when I plugged a fan in suspiciously. We can do the peel! ASMR. Not bad. I'm not entirely sure how much of that you saw. It depends what editor Carl left in. But essentially, my PC just hasn't been loading any games whatsoever that instantly crash, and I was blaming everyone but myself. But it turns out that the 3200 megahertz RAM was overclocked to 3600 and it couldn't take it, hence why it was crashing as soon as we got in a game, which was fun. But here is your acoustic test. And the irony is that at the moment, the loudest bit of the system is actually this fan here at the back. So I would highly advise that you do swap these out. I don't really like them. I guess you could say I'm not a fan. Even though it's hot air, this is lovely right now. Woo! And then let's quickly fire up Shadow the Tomb Raider so you can see all of the thermals. And we've got around about 70 degrees on the GPU and what's that, 47? 47 on the CPU, that is not bad. Remember again, this is a really hot day. It would not normally be like this. All of the windows are shut. We've got studio lights on, so the ambient is up there. But despite this, our temperatures are more than good enough. Both of those are very healthy. So I think you could put some even more powerful hardware in here without any issue at all. Obviously, if you are gonna put extra fans in this, especially at the front and at the top, then you're gonna see even better thermals. So the Flow, funnily enough, the case for the loads of airflow has loads of airflow. It's great. Overall, I would say that I'm a big fan of the H7 Flow. There's not really anything wrong with it, so to speak. There's maybe a couple of things like the hard drive cage that I could do with a couple of rubbers, but that's being really nitpicky. I think for most people, this is going to be very accommodating. It's at a decently accessible price, especially at RRP. You're going to get this for less, let's be honest. And I think it will accommodate pretty much all of the hardware that you want to throw in it. The only real limitations are that it doesn't look amazing straight out of the box. I do think you need to build this up with some RGB lighting, some extra fans and things before it really is going to look the part, but that's the same with most cases, so we can't get too nitpicky with that really. I think this is the NZXT case we've been wanting for ages. It looks good, it's minimalist, and this time it's got loads of airflow. What's not to like? Let me know your thoughts on the H7 Flow down in the comment section below. What do you like about this? What would you change? Will you be picking this up for your RTX 4080 build? I'd love to hear from you. Absolutely smash that like button and get subscribed. And if you do want to check out current pricing on this or anything that's actually in this build, you can with my Amazon affiliate links listed down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one.